Welcome to the Father Focus podcast.
Father Focus.
Check.
Why are we talking about this? Why does it matter?
So shaping your kids into powerful people.
Bro, let that brother fly.
Check.
All right, let's
You
go.
ready?
All right, let's go. I'm with myself.
What up, everybody? Welcome back to another week of the Father Focus podcast. Hope you guys are absolutely killing it today. Got a cool episode. It's actually me and Jermaine hanging out. Jermaine, what's up, bro?
What's going on, man? Glad to be here
Yes.
with you. Excited.
Yes. So our third co-host, Jeremy, is not here. He just had surgery on his Achilles because he's old. Mm-hmm. So he's stuck on a couch for a week. So we're going to hold it down without him. We are not worried. We actually think this episode will actually be better.
Oh, wow.
Because he's not.
Wow.
I'm kidding.
Shots are being
Jeremy,
fired.
we love you. We love you.
We love you, man.
So, today I'm excited about our topic. But before we get into it, I had a hilarious episode with my daughters. Jermaine, you'll love this. Me and Christina, we are definitely not religious when it comes to language. Not like we curse all the time, but like we might say things that are a little bit borderline, like what the, like sucks and things like that some parents feel like you probably shouldn't say around your kids. Jermaine, you probably feel that way. So we noticed that Harper and Brooklyn were just anytime something would happen, they go, what the? And I was like, yeah, this probably isn't good, right? They're 7 years old. They're in first grade. Like, this probably is going to go over real well. And we didn't know what they had heard, Christina say. Who knows if she had, added an extra 4-letter word to the end of that
not.
what the? I don't know. But yeah, we hope not. I'm totally kidding. Christina doesn't do that. She's very holy. And so one day Harper did it, and it just was like, all right, I got to shut this down. So I looked at her. I said, Harper, it's not good for you to say that. It doesn't sound good. And our daughter, Brooklyn, who, is a rule keeper and keeps everybody in line, just without missing a beat goes, well, you say it. And I said, yep, you're right. You're right. I do say it. She said, so why can you say it, but we can't say it? And I had no good answer for her in that moment. So obviously now when I say I just think it in my head or I whisper it under my breath, I probably look really crazy, but I don't say it out loud. So we're killing the game, right?
Way to go.
Killing the game is dead.
Growing.
Yeah, we're making improvements. That's right. So hilarious, man. Kids
you
are
say
awesome.
it. Mm-hmm.
I know. Yeah. They watch everything we do. So dude, today I thought it would be really, really cool if we talked about something that I would say is probably one of the most important things about being a parent and a dad specifically, but I would say in the time we live in is probably the most difficult to do. It's a challenge for everyone I talk to across the board, and it just seems like one of these things that you're good at one moment and you suck at it the next. You know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about the power of presence, of being, active and present, not just in the same room, but your kids feel your attention. And as I was kind of doing some research for this topic, I found a super interesting article. So, obviously orphanages all around the world, especially in some countries like in China where, you're only allowed to have one kid. So a lot of times kids that are females or have deformities will end up like in an orphanage because the parents, want a son. And so they did a lot of research on these kids that grew up in the orphanage, right? These babies. They were well provided for, health care taken care of, food was provided. But what they found is the mortality rate was really high in these orphanages. They couldn't figure out why. The kids were getting all the nutrition and medicine that they needed to develop. But what they found as they studied is that these kids were very, if rarely ever held, given any attention or time. Even though all their physical, biological needs were met, these infants and kids, actually really sad, were dying for lack of presence and power, the power of presence in those kids' life. And I thought it was fascinating. Like what a fascinating concept that, we think about essential needs for kids. Or what do our kids need? They need food and shelter and clothing. But even at the same fundamental level, our kids need to know and sense and feel that they are worth our time and attention. And I just think about the time we live in and how easy it is to get distracted by all the things we have going on, like this reality we live in. And so, that's what we're going to kind of talk about today. Like, how do we be present in a world that is constantly trying to pull us away from giving our kids the attention that they need? So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. I mean, I remember when my kids would even grab my face. Your kids ever done that to you when they were younger? Like they're talking to you and like, Daddy, look at me. Like they actually literally grab my face and turn my face towards them so that they can ensure that they have my full attention. And it does matter. Even as my kids get older, they want to wrestle. They want contact, right? They want to know that they are valued and that they are seen and that I'm with them, I'm present. And so it's still, even with my older kids, it's still true. So I'm looking forward to talking more about this.
Why do you think it's a challenge? Like, like we're both dads that are trying to be the best version of ourselves and want to leave a lasting impact on our kids. So all our motivations are right. We have the right goals. We're freaking doing a podcast on this topic, being great dads. But it's still, the struggle's still real, right? It's something that we constantly wrestle through. So why do you think it's such a challenge for parents and dads in particular to be present in their kids' lives?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. I think, time. I think a lot of times, as a dad, you feel like you don't have enough time, maybe, to do things. Like you're always feeling behind. You're always feeling like you have to you're catching up. You're something to do that needs to be done. You got to cut the grass. You got to fix this thing. You got to replace that thing. You got to take them over here. And our culture is very much about doing. We have a culture that's a doing culture versus a being culture. Versus being a relational culture. We're very much driven by activities and doing things. I think the culture doesn't help at all when it comes to that. When it comes to parents or dads specifically spending time with their kids. Yeah,
culture is huge. There's actually a term that they came up with called technoference. I've never heard that before.
Sounds like a dance. Is that not a dance?
I don't know. Can you display it for us?
Technoference.
Can you bust out a move?
It just sounds like a...
a researcher named Brandon McDaniel came up with the term, and basically what it meant, and obviously we understand this reality because we're all connected to smartphones, that technology has so integrated itself in our lives that technology now has become an interference to the normal bonding relationships. Wow. And they were sharing a lot of these studies that they observed parents out in restaurants when they're with their kids. I think it was like 30-something% were so glued to their phones that at no point during the meal together did they even acknowledge their kid's presence. And actually, the parents became irritated that their kids were bothering them while they were on their phone. And you think about that concept, right? Why would you go out to eat together?
And not be
That's
together.
One of the ways that we build intimacy and connection with each other. But the technology that's so integrated in our lives was actually destroying the intimacy they wanted to create with their kids. And, we think about, like the impulse and, like we were youth pastors for a long time. Do you remember when we took me and Jermaine worked together, we took our kids on this trip and, we tried to always teach our kids to be present where they were. Mm-hmm. And so we would usually like ask them to kind of put their phones away.
Put your phones away.
And there was one kid, do you remember? He was like begging, can I please just charge my phone? I just need to hold it in my hand. Mm-hmm. I'm like, dude, you're like a crack addict right now with your phone. Like
you're
you need to call.
You are having withdrawals
because he hadn't touched his phone or look at it. But like we want to rag on teenagers, but even as adults, like it's so easy to kind of allow something that in the grand scheme of things doesn't matter to steal and rob our attention, right? The notifications and
right.
The updates and all this stuff that happen that basically create these walls and barriers between us connecting to each other. So how do we overcome that? And I think even a better question to ask is, what does it look like as a dad to be really present with your kids? Because I think that could mean a lot of things, right? A dad could say, well, I'm home. Mm-hmm. I'm home for dinner every night, right? I'm in the house. But I think we're talking about something deeper than that. So like, what does it actually mean to be present? And what is the power of presence?
Yeah, I think part of it is understanding what your child considers presence to be. It's not just what I deem. I'm with my child and I'm doing this thing and therefore I am present, and they should like reciprocate that. But it's also finding out, what does my child enjoy? What do they really enjoy? What would they like me to be a part of? That they could, not just me teaching them. It could even be, this second thing is this, not just me teaching them, but them teaching me. Where the roles are switched to some degree, and they're showing me how to draw a thing, how to build a thing. I think those two things could help us really be present as fathers.
So are you kind of talking about like love languages?
Yeah, I think love languages would be, like a love language, right? For sure. The 5 love languages: quality time, physical touch, words of affirmation, gifts, and acts of service. Like my son is an acts of service kid. Like that's just who he is. He'll be out there. We will have to shovel snow sometimes in the godforsaken winter. Bless me. In Omaha. I love Omaha, but the winters, man. And so he'll go out there. He'll be out there for hours. Like I'm out there 8 hours. He'll be out there 8 hours. My daughter, it's cold. I'm going inside. His love language.
Smart girl.
It's acts of service. She is. But my daughter, my older daughter, named Alana, her love language is quality time for sure. And words, maybe words and touch are high in there. She's 13. And so like the way they perceive, the way they receive it and the way they perceive it is different. But if we think of one size fits all type of approach to our kids, we don't connect with them in that way. So it's really seeking to understand what is connecting for them.
Yeah.
What do they value that I can value to connect with them and show them that I love them?
I think that's really key what you said, and I think it's kind of one of those concepts we keep coming back to, is the intentionality of parenting, of actually taking the time to see how do your kids receive love and attention and affection in a way that translates, I care about you, I love you, you're important, right? And it's not the same across the board, like everyone receives that differently. And really even taking the time to figure out, I think what you're saying is taking the time to discover, how does your kid receive what they desperately need? Going back to that analogy of the orphanage, those kids were not getting those basic needs met, which is the reason why they passed away, why they died, because there was a deep-seated need in them that wasn't being fulfilled by really the people that God created inside of them to be met. I think about this. Like when our kids are younger, before they can communicate, it doesn't mean that their needs change. And one of the things that we're talking about in some of the articles I read is that oftentimes what will happen is when a kid feels neglected or not seen by a parent, they'll then act out as a way to get the attention they so desperately crave. And instead of oftentimes parents perceiving this is them acting out of a place of need to be seen and loved, they see it as rebellion or bad behavior. And so they correct the behavior, which obviously we're not trying to advocate, hey, let your kids do what they want. But they're not recognizing the deeper cry in their kid's heart that they don't know how to communicate. I need you to see me. I need you to notice me. I need you to hold me. I need you to recognize me. So how do we as parents, like, get past all of the distractions of everyday life and the tiredness and the busyness and actually see beneath the surface that maybe sometimes, like, what our kids are going through, the way they're acting out, when they're out of sorts, they're not acting like themselves, maybe it's a cry for attention. Yeah. How do we recognize that?
Well, I think you can't recognize it if you don't slow down. Right? We got to slow down. I think we have to, you mentioned something that was so interesting, Nathan. You were sharing about the correction, but we forget about the connection, right? So you need to. Yeah, that's good. I want to, and I fail at it sometimes. I want to correct from connection, not just right. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes we're just correcting because we see the behavior, like you said. Yeah. It could be immaturity, right, and not rebellion. Sometimes they look alike. Or like you said, it could be just they're acting out because they want attention. They're at a deficit, and much of our generation's at a deficit, like you mentioned. You see it with the cell phones, you see it with and so sometimes your kid may be so used to not having connection, they don't receive it from you in the beginning. Maybe they're like, well, you've been ignoring me this whole time. Right. I've been on my cell phone. I know you give me this cell phone, this PS whatever, and you're giving me this Nintendo Switch because you're wanting to appease me and not be there. And maybe when you first, for that parent that's out there, that's okay, I want to do this, or I'm doing that, I'm reaching out, I'm connecting, and they're pushing me away. It may take some time. You may have to have a serious talk with your child about, and repent even or apologize because of I've neglected you, and I've given you this thing to replace me in a sense, and your kid may resist that in the very beginning. So just don't give up. Continue to lean into that, and even have a conversation if need be with your child.
Neglect can be a form of abuse, can it?
Yeah.
Which maybe sometimes we don't always equate as abusive behavior, but when we're emotionally absent, when we're distant in connection with our kids, I think it communicates something. There's a quote that I read that I thought really fit well. It said, "All fathers are teachers. Some are absent, some are reluctant, but children will learn something from us." And I thought about like the positive and the negative to that statement. The negative is obvious. When we teach our kids that our job or our hobbies or our career or the TV or the sports game is more important than them, what are we teaching them? They don't have much value, right? They're not worthy of our attention and time. And there's a correlation between kids that go through social issues, insecurity, mental health issues. There is a correlation between that and the absence of a father and a parent in their life.
Yeah.
But the opposite is also true, and it's really empowering. When I decide as a parent to put everything else down, and I understand, like, I'm kind of putting myself in this moment, thinking about what it will be like when I get home tonight. And, I'm tired and I've been at work all day and, I'm emotionally drained. What I'll have to resist and what I'll have to fight through to actually be present, to look my kids in the eye and listen when they talk to me and when they say, Dad, look at this. And everything inside of me says, I'm too tired to look. I just want to lay down. I just need to, go on my phone and check the sports scores or whatever. When I make that decision to fight through, I'm also teaching my kids the intrinsic value that they have, right? That they are so important that I'm willing to expend the energy, the effort, and the attention that I feel have very little of, that they're worthy of the things that cost me something, right?
Yeah. And
what does that teach them long term? It gives them self-confidence. It gives them value. It teaches them that they are worthy of time and attention, right? And so as fathers, it's not always what we say that teaches our kids something. It's how we live.
Yes.
It's how we treat them. It's how we act when they're in the room. And I think that's really empowering. At least for me, it's very encouraging to think that I can communicate how valuable my daughters are by just being present and seeing and hearing them, right? Does that make sense?
It does. And I think we have to think about our own fathers. I think sometimes our natural inclination is to do what's been done. We've had a model. Yeah. And so it's been modeled before us, whether we realize it or not. Like you mentioned in that quote, intentionally or unintentionally, they're learning. And sometimes we got to go backward to go forward to look at, okay, how was I fathered? My dad worked a lot, or he, was present but wasn't present, or we got to go back and we have to kind of deconstruct and then reconstruct in our families what we want to see in our kids. And like you mentioned, even when you're tired, your kids know you're tired. But when you lean in anyway, when you do the thing anyway with grace and with love, your kids are learning. They are seeing it. They're not going, oh man, well he's tired. They don't see it that way as, oh, he's tired. He's not fully invested. They see it as, oh, Dad's tired, but he's still giving me time. Right? Even if you fall asleep on them, it still communicates love to your child. So don't let fatigue, or even if it's a short amount of time, prevent you from spending that time.
Yeah. And kind of focusing more on the positive, they did share in some of those studies, listen to this, this is the power of presence in your kids' lives, is lowered levels of disruptive behavior, acting out, depression, telling lies. Kids obey their parents more. They're more kind to others. They're more responsible. Boys have fewer behavioral issues, and girls are happier, more confident, and willing to try new things, all when they feel that their parents give them the attention that they desperately need. Wow. And I think I would kind of leave with this thought before we get really practical, is we believe that God created in each of us a desire and longing to be seen, known and loved by our parents. Like that's a desire that God created in every human being. And when we meet that desire in our kids, it unlocks something in their identity, not just their behavior, but in their identity that tells them how valuable and worthy they are. And so, for me, I want my daughters to be happy. I want them to be confident. I want, for those of you guys with sons out there, I want my sons to have confidence. I want them to be who God's called them to be. All of that starts with how I communicate value through my presence in their life. And so I hope that motivates you to make some adjustments in your life. If you're the dad that's physically present but emotionally and spiritually absent, then this is an encouragement to make some changes in just how you approach your home life with your kids. And if you're always gone, then maybe you need to take some things off your plate to be present for your kids, so that in the long term they can then carry my dad was there, or if we're talking to single moms, my mom was there, they cared about me, they saw me, in the middle of everything, they made me a priority. I think that's the thing we're speaking. So let's kind of wrap up with this, dude. Give people one or two practical ways that they can practice being present with their kids. Like, what does that look like?
One or two ways they can practice being present with their kids. A practical way is that we do it is we have family game time. And so this is not like a video game. This is like board games.
Yes.
And so you'd be surprised on what happens playing Monopoly with your kids. Seriously. And just, trouble. Like, we have a closet full of games. Throw burrito is a great one. They get to hit each other. They love it. And it's this foam burrito thing, and they chunk it at me. And so just those kind of games, like slowing down and them seeing you be silly. Like, don't underestimate the power of them seeing you be silly and them laughing and you learning to laugh at yourself. Like, you're leaving an impression on your child, not take themselves or you too seriously. They'll not be afraid of failing and laughing at themselves. So a practical thing that we do is we have family game time, and we go all out. Like, it's a time where we're not just, they get to pick the game, and then we play the game together as a family.
Right,
and
you're in it.
And we're in it. We're invested in it, and we're we lovingly talk a little trash. Like, I'm gonna take, like, we poke at them, a little bit jokingly with all and good fun to show them that we're in it. And
that's good.
So there's a practical way.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think for me, and this one's a little bit different, but I think this one's really helpful. Like me and Christina, it's funny because of our schedules, we rarely drive together. Like as a family, we're not in the car very often because we're going different places or on different schedules. And so by default, the girls just tend to ride with her. And so one of the things I've done to kind of steal away moments with the girls is I'll have one of them ride with me, and we'll do something fun along the way. Like, they love going through the car wash. So we'll go through the car wash, and I'm very intentionally asking them certain questions while we're in the car together. Like, well, tell me what you're thinking, or what have you been excited about? And, there's a tendency in me to get distracted, put on music or a podcast, but I intentionally turn those things off, and I just listen to them and I ask them questions. That's a really simple way to steal away moments of presence to communicate to your kids. And I think the other thing that we try to do, I would say as dads, I know moms typically put kids to bed, but I think there's a lot of power in you as a father, if you're out there, to take a little bit of time at night to spend with your kids, just putting them to bed, even if it's just praying over them or reading a story or just sitting with them, asking about their day. I think those little things mean a lot more to your kids than you think they do. Mm-hmm. And so even last night, I was just sitting with Brooklyn and asking her some things, and she's been having nightmares, and I was just trying to understand like what she saw. And we had this like really cool spiritual conversation about what she was seeing, both like, in the demonic and the angelic, and, a lot of those things. And it was just cool to kind of hear her heart come out, but it was because I intentionally got up from the couch where I was extremely comfortable. I walked into her room and I started just saying, "Hey, Brooklyn, I just want to pray with you before you go to bed. How are you're still having nightmares? What's going on with that?" And just, I think a lot of times it's just asking the right questions and just sitting there and listening, right? Yeah. And just being attentive. Like, presence, one of the ways that you really communicate the power of presence is attentiveness.
Absolutely.
And it's taking the time to look at the things that aren't obvious as a dad. And I think the cool thing about, for those of you that walk with Jesus is the Holy Spirit's really good. If you'll just stay in communication with him, he'll point out little things that are harder to notice that are worth leaning into and asking questions about. And so, I hope that encourages you as a dad today, kind of as we wrap this. I know it's a very simple concept, but I would say it's so difficult to practice well. And so we want to put a stake in the ground again and really challenge you as a dad to be present, to communicate value. So Jermaine, you want to kind of share one closing thought before we wrap up?
Yeah. One more thing I would say is, just to encourage you out there, maybe your time is a thing for you. You're struggling with it. One of the things we do also is we pick a child, it's like one different each week, and let them stay up a little bit later. So the other kids are put in bed. Good. So maybe you don't have the time. You're working crazy throughout the day and in your evenings. Take one of your children, and that week they get to stay up late on one Thursday night or whatever night it is. They get to pick what we want to do. What do you want to do? You want to play a game? You want to watch a movie? You want to, and we got a treat for you. You want to do what? You want to do popcorn, or you want to do Power Boot? We make it really special for them. They get to plan the night.
It's great.
They get to plan the setting, and it's a practical way. Just an hour and a half. It don't have to be too late. Maybe 2, whatever. Of them, they feel special. They're staying up late with mom and dad. We're focusing on them. Mom and dad both are focusing on them, celebrating some things that they hold dear together. That may be another practical way. You can do it, right? Like you said, the Holy Spirit is very, very gifted in helping us create ways of connection with our children. So
that's so good. Well, dads, I hope you're encouraged out there, man. This is such a simple thing. It doesn't take skill. It doesn't take a Fortune 500, right, CEO title. Right. Every dad, no matter your place in life, can show up and be present. I think it's one of the most powerful things you can do. So practice it this week. Don't just let this be a podcast you listen to, but something you put into practice when you get home today. If you're listening on the way home, when you get home today, take the time to spend with your kids. Put your phone in the other room.
Yes.
Throw away the computer, turn it off, and be with your kids in that moment. And, man, I think you'll be surprised the difference it makes in your family. So, as always, man, I hope you guys are encouraged to kill it as a dad. We believe in you. We know that God has called you to a great, great calling, and we're here to encourage you, to cheer you on as you go after that. So thank you guys for hanging out with us today. We hope this podcast encouraged you. And, just kind of closing thoughts as you guys kind of wrap up today. Man, it means so much to us if you would like, share, and subscribe this episode. If you know a dad who is struggling, this would be a great podcast to share with them, to encourage them. And give us feedback. Go on iTunes or Spotify and leave us a review. If you have questions, you can find us on social media. You can DM us those. We just want to help you guys. And as we kind of close off, go kill it as a dad today. You got this.
You can do it.
You can do it, man. Go kill it. All right. Peace out.
Peace.